up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. And in today's video, we are going to be discussing another general manager candidate, but this one is a little bit different. This one's kind of important. You know why? Well, because the Detroit Lions are reportedly going to interview this candidate before Christmas. So let's get it started.
You know, I got to shout out DoseOfDion, man, because it was actually the first time I went live on YouTube. And, you know, guys don't know, DoseOfDion, he put out a lot of good content for the Detroit Lions.
Welcome everybody to another video. Glad you guys are here. You already know it's going to be a good day when I flip the pen up and I catch it in one try, no drops. That's a good day. And there's no tape in my hand. Also, I said Christmas. Yeah, Christmas is only 11 days away. 11 days. What? Man, what's happened? This year is going extremely fast. And the cat, what is the cat doing? There goes my pen. Okay, well, the day's starting to go pretty bad. We're going to be talking about this general manager candidate, and that is Rick Smith. Now, a lot of the general manager candidates that the Detroit Lions most likely will interview already are in a job, so you can't really go interview those guys. But this one is a little bit different. Rick Smith, he doesn't have a job right now, so he's someone that the Lions can interview, and technically they could hire him because he doesn't have another job. Now, I looked up the rules. The Rooney rules state that you have to interview one minority. So I think technically they could hire him if they wanted to, but I would expect them to look at more general manager candidates. I kind of hope they do. I kind of do. Like, okay, yeah, that's cool. You looked at one outside of, in-house, but let's wait a little bit. Let's keep our eye on some other candidates. Unless they really like him and they just jump on it. I don't know. I mean, either way, I'm just hoping we find the right guy, whether it's now or later. But we're talking about Rick Smith in today's video. I just think it's the perfect time to do it because if we get this report, then why not? If we know they're actually going to interview this guy, then why not talk about him? Let's discuss Rick Smith just a little bit here. Now, these GM videos are very difficult to do. They're just so difficult because it's just so hard to judge candidates. Now, coming into this video, I think Ed Dodge is probably my top, but, you guys have seen the 5 videos. You guys know where I stand on those. So let's take a quick look at the background of Rick Smith. So Rick Smith was a former player. He was a strong safety with the Purdue Boilermakers, but he wasted no time getting into the coaching world. He became the youngest full-time position coach in the Big Ten at 24 years old. He was the secondary coach for the Purdue Boilermakers. Just makes sense, right? He was a safety, and then he became the secondary coach. But 24 years old, that's extremely young. But that's not the only thing he was the youngest to. Also, he was the youngest general manager as the Houston Texans hired him at 36 years old. But before we got to that point, he then worked with the Denver Broncos after Purdue. And with the Denver Broncos, he worked his way up. He first started working with the defensive backs, and they have one of the top units in the league. They actually won 2 Super Bowls in his time working there. He worked his way all the way up through the ranks, pretty impressive, to the director of pro personnel with the Broncos. He got his opportunity with Houston, then he became the GM at 36 years old, and he spent a long time there, over a decade as their general manager. Now, a lot of guys, they get fired, they have no job, and then they're trying to find one. But this one is a little bit different. Now, this is honestly super unfortunate, but this is what happened. He actually stepped away from football to help his wife, who was ill. Unfortunately, she did pass away, but he stepped away for that reason. So it wasn't like he was fired. He stepped away to take care of his wife, and now he's looking to get back into things. He could potentially be looking to get back into things. And the Lions aren't the only team that could be showing interest. I've heard the Falcons are very, very tied to this guy. There's also some other teams around the league who are looking for a GM. Maybe even the Texans again, but who knows if he'd go back there. Either way, there's teams interested because it wasn't like he was fired. And it's not like he did a terrible job with the Houston Texans. He actually took over pretty much a complete mess, if we're being honest here. The team he took over before was 2-14, and they won 18 games in 4 seasons combined. They were not a good team. Houston was really at their lowest of lows. But then all of a sudden they had this new general manager, Rick Smith, step in. And it wasn't like, okay, we're right to the Super Bowl. They improved. In 2006, his first year there, they went to 6-10. That's a 4-game improvement. It's solid. Then 8-8, then 8-8, then 9-7. And they became a playoff team. He made the playoffs, I believe, 4 times there. His total record was 92-100, which is 48% winning percentage. And like I said, he stepped away in 2017. But in 2018 and 2019, they were, 11-5, 10-6. So he could have been a part of that because he helped build a lot of the players that were there. That season came in 2012 when he led his team to a 12-4 record. Now, for the Texans fans, it seems like he hasn't been there in a long time. The reason being is because they've been flying through general manager since. We know they had that whole experiment going on there with Bill O'Brien, and that didn't work out. The whole Bill O'Brien thing didn't work. Well, he actually got into what some would say kind of a dispute with Bill O'Brien, and that relationship wasn't very good. And I honestly don't blame him. I mean, when you see what Bill O'Brien did as basically their general manager and head coach, you look at that and say, okay, I can see why this guy could get on your nerves a little bit here. So that didn't work out, but now he's potentially looking to get a job as a general manager. manager. So the reason this is interesting to me is because, one, he wasn't fired. So it wasn't like they felt like, okay, he's doing a bad job, get him out of here, because they actually gave him an extension. And he actually didn't go through his extension because he stepped away. They gave him a 4-year extension, I think, back in 2016. So they liked him enough to give him that extension. He just didn't go all the way through it. Now, he made some very questionable moves, but he also made some very good moves, and he made them, I would say, relevant again, right? He got them into a competitive team, and they were not anywhere near that in the seasons before he got there. I mean, they were a mess in Houston, and that's why they hired a new general manager. And at his age, he was able to figure it out, and he was really able to help that team build. And he's brought in some of the biggest pieces in the Houston Texans franchise. I mean, honestly, think about some of these names he's brought in. J.J. Watt, DeAndre Hopkins, his last draft, Deshaun Watson, Jadeveon Clowney. He brought in some very big names. Very big names. Now, there's a whole list. I can throw it on the screen. We'll read through it real quickly. Through draft and free agency and trades, just some of the biggest names. A.J. Boye, Arian Foster, Mario Williams, Matt Schaub, Lamar Miller, Chris Myers, Hardrick McKinney, Nico Ryans, Eric Winston, Will Fuller, Owen Daniels. So he's brought in some really big names. He's hit on some home runs, no question about it. And especially finding their future quarterback, it looks like, in Deshaun Watson, who's been an absolute beast. Just unfortunately for him, he hasn't really got to work with him because the year he drafted him, he then had to step away. But either way, he's drafted some really big pieces, and he's helped them really become relevant again. And around the league, he's known as a guy with a friendly personality, right? He's a nice personality. He doesn't remind me of some of those really outspoken guys. Maybe he is. I mean, I don't know him that well. But from what I've heard, he's a friendly guy. Affable. I had to look at what affable means. I'm not lying with y'all. I said, okay, what does affable mean? So I'm saying friendly, because if I said affable, y'all be like, what was he talking about? Maybe. Or he might know the word. I just might not know the word. One of the biggest, I could say concerns with his resume is the fact that he signed Brock Osweiler. Remember that mess when he gave Brock Osweiler like a huge deal, and it was like, oh gosh, this is not good. Well, actually, some Houston Texans fans, if you go back and look at the, the articles when they got him, Texans fans, some of them were excited, like, oh man, he just stole him. Like, he just stole this guy, right? This is a steal. And we know that didn't work out like that. But he was able to do a good job to actually trade him away and get the team that he traded them to pay the money. So yes, he made a very, very questionable signing when he brought in Brock Osweiler, no question about that. So traded for Matt Schaub earlier in his tenure as their general manager to give them a quarterback. So the next time he tried with Brock Osweiler, because Brian Hoyer was their quarterback, they needed somebody, so he threw the money at him. It didn't work, but he was able to trade him away, and then he found once again their future quarterback in Deshaun Watson. So one of his biggest hiccups, at least he sort of saved himself there, okay? It's not something that will completely taint his legacy, because he was able to fix it a little bit. When it comes to draft time, he's not afraid to trade back in the draft. That's something that I found pretty interesting, is that there's occasions where you'll see him trade back-to-back picks, where he'll just trade back and then back again to just load up on some picks. But his mentality in his draft is not always the same. I mean, this isn't the mentality that everybody has in the draft. And here's his quote. And the reason I think this is important, because I feel like this wasn't the same mentality that we had with Bob Quinn. Not saying this was wrong. It was just a different approach. And some people may like this, some people not. It's always the best player available. That's how he does it. He's saying it's the best player available, because there were certain drafts where he would take a player that maybe that wasn't their biggest position of need, and people like, why would you do that? Why'd you pass? And sometimes it works, sometimes it wouldn't, right? He missed on some. Everybody misses on picks, okay? Everybody does. So it's really hard to judge based on that. But he would pass on certain positions of need just to get the best player available. Perfect example, Jadeveon Clowney. Now, Jadeveon Clowney didn't have the hottest start. People are saying, well, this guy might be a bust. But he turned out to be a pretty darn good player, and he was a big name this offseason. Now, they didn't keep him around. But he took Jadeveon Clowney and passed on quarterbacks. Now, that quarterback draft, at the time, it looked like, wow, he missed on some talent here. But looking back, I mean, look, he didn't miss on too much. Like, sure, you always take a quarterback over a pass rusher. But you to look at the quarterbacks he passed on, it was Blake Bortles, it was Derek Carr, and it was Teddy Bridgewater. Okay quarterbacks, not Blake Bortles. The other two are okay, but it's not like he missed on, I don't think, a great quarterback. And again, he did find their franchise quarterback eventually anyway. So that's definitely how he drafts. He drafts best player available. The best player that he thinks has the most talent, he will take them. He says this, in my opinion, to the success of consistent drafting to distinguish between need and value, I think when you set your board according to value and where you see it. Players' abilities and capabilities to perform. If you can get a player at a corresponding value in a round that's a position of need, that's the ideal scenario and situation. So yeah, I mean, that's obviously ideal. If you can get someone that you think has great value and is position need, perfect. But he will go for the best player available. So that's just kind of the way he drafts. Let's take a look at the pros and cons that I came up with for our guy Rick Smith here as a general manager. We're going to start off with the pros first. The first pro is this. He helped build a defense that was pretty dominant in the NFL. Now, he was not afraid to use his capital on the defense, even with an offensive-minded coach in a guy like Gary Kubiak. I mean, when Gary Kubiak stepped in as his first-year head coach, Reggie Bush was there, and they're thinking, okay, this will be their number one pick. Instead, they decided to go with Mario Williams. Now, Mario Williams' rookie season, maybe not as planned, but we know that turned up really quickly, and he had some really good seasons after that. Guys like Jadeveon Clowney, J.J. Watt, right? He brought in his defensive guys, and you could see that he definitely likes his defensive ends as well. So if you want the Lions to get a defensive end, then maybe this is the guy for you. But really from 2011 through 2016, they had a very dominant defense. And again, that's with an offensive-minded head coach, which is pretty impressive, to be honest. Offense did improve with Gary Kubiak. Again, Gary Kubiak steps in. Now this team, there was really only one way, and that was up. Okay, they were terrible on offense and defense. Before both Rick Smith and Kubiak stepped in, this team was bad on offense and defense. They were 2-14 for a reason, but the offense got better. The offense definitely got better in the years that he was there, then until he was fired, which was back in 2013. Now, the reason he was fired, well, they were bad, right? They were really bad that season, but also their quarterback position was really awful. They had Matt Schaub, who was like the perfect game manager. That was until 2013, where he just had a really bad season. It's like, okay, yep, he's not the same guy we thought he was anymore. He's not that anymore. So they had to look elsewhere, and that was just a very bad season. But only 10 touchdowns to 14 interceptions for Matt Schaub that season. And they did that with a guy like Matt Schaub at quarterback. So not the most dominant quarterback, but it did improve. And that was the guy that, we got to keep in mind, the head coach does have some say in players that they bring in. I mean, you would think that they're discussing these things together. So if a guy brings in, a GM brings in somebody, the head coach is also going to be involved in that decision. It's not just one guy's decision to make that move. Also, when they did bring in Bill O'Brien, now I don't know how much say he had over Bill O'Brien being hired as their head coach there, but he was there when he was hired. I'm assuming he had some. And Bill O'Brien, yeah, you know what? You hear that name and you're thinking, oh gosh, that's not what I want. But it did work. I mean, when he was their head coach there, it did work. And also the interesting thing about Bill O'Brien is that he had former head coaching experience. Now, I haven't been able to find that they hired Gary Kubiak through Rick Smith, like that was Rick Smith's guy. It seems like that was more of the owner's decision. But when they brought in a guy in Bill O'Brien, I know Rick Smith was there as their general manager. So I'm thinking he probably had a pretty nice say over that. And again, Bill O'Brien worked. I mean, he stepped in. He made him 9-7 back-to-back years. He took him to some playoff appearances, and they won the division under him. So it definitely worked. The thing about Bill O'Brien that's interesting is that he was a former head coach in college at Penn State. So something to look for there is if the Lions are looking for a head coach, and we did have Rick Smith, would he go out and hire somebody that has former head coaching experience, which, by the way, I'd be all in for. But the big issue here was when Bill O'Brien took over as the general manager after Rick Smith stepped away. That's where they had issues because that general manager position really since then has just been a complete mess. I mean, they're just trying to figure that thing out. And then Bill O'Brien, we know he took over as GM, and that just went awful. Now, some of the concerns is first off the quarterback issues. Now, yes, the biggest thing here is that he did hit on Deshaun Watson. Now, he wasn't there to see Deshaun Watson and develop, but he did hit on Deshaun Watson, which is great. And again, the coaches are going to have a say on this, so it's really hard to judge. But there were some quarterback issues, mainly when Matt Schaub was done. Like, I don't think it was bad that he brought in Matt Schaub. He made that trade for him because it worked. I mean, it worked for their offense, and they were solid. But it was after Matt Schaub, and it took them some time to figure out that quarterback position. I mean, like I said, they signed a guy in, Brock Osweiler. Again, coaching is going to have some effect on this, but they signed Brock Osweiler. The only quarterback that they drafted from the time they brought in Deshaun Watson to the time that Matt Schaub was gone, the only quarterback in between that 2013 and 2017 season, Tom Savage. And we know Tom Savage didn't work out as well. They tried, but they didn't work. But they went through tons of quarterbacks. I mean, they went through Ryan Mallett, Tom Savage, Fitzpatrick, Keenum, Hoyer. It was just... For a couple of years there, it was like, okay, wow, this is an absolute mess. And that makes you pretty concerned as a Lions fan because you're thinking, okay, well, if Stafford isn't here next year and we're looking for a new quarterback and this is our GM, okay, he can hit on a quarterback in the draft, which is cool. He's also prone to passing on quarterbacks if he doesn't love his guy, which makes sense. But that could mean the Lions could be without a quarterback, and we could be in a really, really awkward situation if Stafford's not here next season. I mean, people don't realize, though, how hard it is to find a quarterback. They think you just draft one, and I got a quarterback, we're okay. It's not like that, man. It's just so difficult to find one no matter where you are in the draft. So just selecting one anyways won't equal success. But will we be able to figure out that quarterback position? I mean, at least he showed he could get Watson. But aside from that, I mean, they had a couple of years there where without Schaub, it was, okay, yeah, this is a mess. This is terrible. So it's kind of a weird situation that he'd be coming into anyways. You already have Chase Daniel signed, so you're thinking you're going to have to draft somebody. Will he hit on another draft pick like he did with Deshaun Watson, or will he end up getting a guy like Tom Savage? The biggest concern really for me is that whole quarterback situation. I mean, that to me is just like, oh gosh, oh no, I don't want to be in a mess like that. Okay, I don't really want to go through that kind of situation. I don't know what's going to happen. Are we going to hit on our Deshaun Watson? Or are we going to, be cycling through random free agents and it's just going to be a disaster? Is that what's going to happen here? Because that's not what you want. You don't want that. I mean, you're not going to win games like that. So how much trust do you have that this guy can pick a quarterback that can help you find a quarterback? He did bring in 39 Pro Bowlers in his time with Houston. 39, that's a lot. Something that's interesting is that, I mean, if you think about it, DeAndre Hopkins, who he brought in, and also Jaden Clowney, both those guys could potentially still be there if Rick Smith was still there. I mean, they were let go when he was gone. So maybe they're still there if Rick Smith is there. So he did bring in those guys. He was not the one that decided to move on from those players. I'm not sure if he would have or not, but he definitely will bring in a lot of pass rushers. So if that's not your forte, I know it's not everybody's. Maybe this ain't the guy for you. So that was a handful of information there, a handful of ideas and thoughts and just different ideas of bringing in a guy like Rick Smith. I know I kind of go off on a little bit of a, what did they call it, a tangent there? Get off on a tangent? What? Big words. No. Maybe I go off on a little bit of a rant there. Just kind of go in a little bit and I start getting going. I just keep looking up different stuff and it starts to get kind of confusing. So in conclusion, Here's just kind of how I'm looking at this. My biggest concern is the quarterback situation. What will work there? Now, I know as a general manager, to me, I look at him as more of a defensive general manager. Now, you may be confused what the heck I'm talking about. I look at him as a defense general manager because, well, one, it seems like he loves to bring in his defensive guy, especially his pass rushers, to help out his secondary, which makes sense because he's helping out his secondary, knowing that he was a secondary coach and he was also a secondary player. He knows the importance of getting pass rushers. So as a fan that wants more pass rushers, I think that's something that you should definitely keep in mind with Rick Smith is that, okay, I feel like this is the type of GM that would want to build through the trenches of the defense where I want to get more pass rushers. I want to give us some help off the edge. So I could see him being a guy to say, okay, we're going to try to bring back Everson Griffin. That could be the type of mindset. Romeo Cora. Get guys like that. Guys that can help me get to the quarterback. And we already have a young secondary for the most part where he could say, okay, if I get more pass rush, these guys can build. So he may actually be interested in this job. And he may want to keep Matthew Stafford and saying that, you know what? I'll help you. Maybe I can draft and find a developmental quarterback. On paper, this could work out perfectly. We're thinking of a guy that has experience in the secondary. We have a young secondary. You're thinking of a guy that wants to build pass rush. Well, I think that's, really what the Lions do need. They need some help there as well, some outside rushers. And then you think of a guy that's looking at this saying, all right, I like to keep Matthew Stafford, if Stafford wants to stay, of course. I like to keep him because, I know how difficult it can be to find a quarterback, and Stafford's probably the best quarterback that I've ever worked with. We'll see what Deshaun Watson turns into. So I like to keep Stafford. Then I could try to draft a developmental quarterback as we go through these next couple of drafts. Just keep hitting and see if I can find one, even if that's a top pick, wherever that may be in the draft, because I've shown I can hit on Watson. I missed on Savage, so maybe I could hit one while Stafford was here and at least play him through his contract, try to build through this defense. You could have an offensive-minded head coach and a guy like Darrell Bevel, or he may bring in a head coach that's had head coaching experience. So for me, I think on paper this plays out as, this could be a good thing. Like, I know there's concerns, there's hits, there's misses, but on paper, if you just play it out in that scenario, that sounds great. Unless this scenario quickly turns, then all of a sudden he hires a head coach that maybe he has problems with, and then you can't find a quarterback because Matthew Stafford wants to get out of here, and you have these weird free agents, and you have a complete mess, and he drafts a Tom Savage, and you're like, who in the world is our quarterback here? Everything kind of just goes down in flames, which both scenarios could happen. So, yeah, in conclusion, I wouldn't be mad. I wouldn't be opposed. I mean, he's a former general manager with experience, which automatically makes me interested. I would love to get a guy with experience that's been there, done that, that can step in day one, kind of has a vision, outline, knows what he wants to do, and, he's done it before. He's had some success before. So, yeah, I mean, I don't think I dislike it. Those are just my ideas. Hopefully you guys watched the end here. If you guys did watch to this part, maybe comment like a coconut or something. I don't know. Something weird, goofy emoji, and I'll know. Thank you, Brian, for watching. And I'm out. Are you kidding me right now? I had to put my helmet on for this one. Are you kidding? Look at this. Look at all these members. What? Yo, hey, shout out to all the members, man. Look how many All-Pro members there are. Like, literally, it's the whole screen, dog. This is crazy. The patrons, of course, the Hall of Fame members, man. Y'all got the gold color. It's kind of yellow, but it's supposed to be gold. Shout out to all the members, man. If you want to be a part of this, all you got to do is join the channel. But there are perks that come with it. Stay locked in the community tab if you are a member, because that's where a lot of information comes out. I appreciate all of you. What?